Drive Time Live with Mills Crenshaw.
It's 6:04. Got that backwards. Sorry about that. It's 4:06. In the Mountain West End, I welcome you to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show. My guest this hour is Joel Skousen. You can find him at joelskousen.com. That's World Affairs Brief. Joel, welcome to K-Talk.
Thank you, Mills. It's good to be with you again.
It's my pleasure, sir. The sad thing is, gee, there's nothing going on that we can even talk about, is there?
I wish that were true, but it isn't.
There is that famous Chinese curse, may you live in interesting times, and we certainly do that.
When I was growing up, Mills, I was always taught about the last days and the tribulations and the terrible things that would be happening, and I always thought, I'm going to live through that. It's going to be interesting to see how we go from a relatively libertarian, prosperous society into tyranny, and I have the privilege of being able to document that every week, that slide into tyranny in my World Affairs Brief.
The tragedy about it is, Joel, you're absolutely right, but it happens so naturally that people seem to be totally oblivious to what's going on.
Yeah, that's a real problem. In Jack Manette's very fine book, Awakening to Our Awful Situation, I wrote the foreword, and I addressed that very topic of why people, especially good Christian people, seem to want to believe in the positive. They want to believe in the government. They want to believe what leaders say. And that's been used against us. We've got a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing that are lying continually. And yet people have this trusting belief because we came from a free country, we had a Constitution. I mean, even the Supreme Court claims to be honoring the Constitution. They give speeches honoring the Constitution, yet they willfully violate it at will whenever they want.
Well, just today, the ruling today is a mixed bag. And the thing that has startled me the most is that the media is totally distorting what the Supreme Court actually ruled.
Tell me how you view that. I've just been looking at it, and it looks very, very bad. Do you see some positive things in that ruling?
Well, everybody talks about the fact, when I say everybody, I'm talking about major news outlets, talking about how various parts of it were struck down. They struck down parts of Arizona's laws. That isn't what they did. What they did was they basically said, look, this part of the law is already contained in the federal law, therefore it is superseded by the federal law. That's not the same as striking down and saying, no, what you're doing in Arizona is illegal, immoral, and fattening.
Well, the legal effect, though, Mills, is the same because they denied states' rights to defend their own borders and implement their own immigration law. That's what the ruling did. Everyone's in agreement with that. They took away the arrest powers based upon state sovereignty issues, and it's a major violation of the Constitution to take away those state sovereignty issues.
Well, Sheriff Arpaio said, I'm not going to stop anything. I'm going to go ahead the way we've always done it.
Well, here's the problem, though. No longer will the federal government come and take into custody anybody arrested by Sheriff Arpaio. And so what does he do? He's got to charge them with a crime that can, and it can't be just illegal immigration because that's a federal offense, not a state crime. And so he's got to eventually get. And that's the problem here, is the feds have not only shut down states' rights and their ability to enforce immigration violations on state borders with a foreign country, they have also rescinded for every state that has a tight anti-illegal immigration law, like Alabama, one of the Carolinas, Utah, and Arizona, and said, we're not going to allow you to use 287G. This is the federal rule that allows them ICE to deputize local officials to make immigration-based arrests. That means they can. And what's interesting is that they left intact the thing that everybody thought was going to get down was the racial profiling, that they could stop them in traffic. They left that intact by basically saying, we can give them that. It doesn't mean anything because they can't arrest anybody now. And the feds have said, we're not going to go to Arizona and accept any of those people that Arizona has arrested. So, and that's illegal because that's the law. That is the federal government responsibility. And there are laws that, demand that they, in fact, enforce the law.
It seems that there's only one solution to this, and that is to change the executive branch.
Yes. And the problem, of course, and that's what we've been trying to do, in this whole political scenario, is to get rid of this executive branch, not to get rid of the branch itself, but the people who occupy it that are puppets of this globalist, federalist, or socialist type federalist government, which basically says, we can do whatever we want. That's what Obama did with Attorney General Eric Holder, giving him executive privilege cover for the Fast and Furious. I mean, they simply thumb their nose at Congress and the law, and we've never had anybody actually put in prison on contempt of Congress charges.
It seems to me that we have a dictator-in-chief right now, that he despises the Constitution and he is willfully ignoring the Constitution, and he's taking unto himself powers that the Constitution does not grasp or grant. Am I overstating this?
Probably understating it in the sense that it's not Obama. Obama is, I'll guarantee you, is a puppet. He takes orders on everything.
From whom?
That's what we don't know, but we do know that they have handlers. Now, I can tell you that Donald is one of his major handlers. Usually the National Security Advisor is that, but with President Bush, it was Dick Cheney was his handler, the vice president. That's why Dick Cheney had over 600 people unofficially on his staff in every part of government, because he was running the government. Now, not because Cheney himself, but Cheney's part of a larger system which is filled with unknown, powerful people who control both political parties. And that's why we've seen the Romney campaign just sabotaged and compromised till it's going to be nothing but a clone of Obama, except for a few minor, pro-business decisions. But he's going to have a worse foreign policy. Even Obama's playing a role, trying to maintain a little bit of anti-war promises made during his campaign. But Romney's going to be terribly aggressive, doesn't have a clue about the globalist agenda that his advisors are foisting upon him.
Well, I hear this. I hear this particularly from Ron Paul supporters, and I have not heard anything specific from Romney that indicates to me that he's going to be a warmonger.
Oh, yes. Everything he said indicates that. For example, he said that he will use military force against Iran. He will not let it achieve a nuclear weapon. Of course, there's no proof whatsoever. But even worse is that he said is that I don't have to go to Congress for authorization to attack Iran.
When did he say that?
He literally said that. That was 3 weeks ago. He said, I do not have to get permission from Congress, have all the authority I need to attack Iran. Now, that is as bad as George Bush, that's as bad as Barack Obama, and it's blatant for a man who claims he's a conservative to say something like that.
Well, it's interesting because on almost all of the issues that I've heard Romney speak on, and I must confess I missed that one entirely, almost everything I've heard him say, he has been very deferential to Congress, and one of his major criticisms of Obama is that Obama is trying to circumvent Congress.
Yeah, I know, and it's so hypocritical for him to come out and say that he would attack Iran without seeking approval of Congress, that international support was sufficient. I mean, that's the same thing that George Bush says. That's the same thing that Obama did going into Libya, is permission from NATO. That's like saying we got permission from ourselves because we control NATO. I mean, it's just circular reasoning. But it's, for a Republican person who claims he's a conservative to take that position, which is as thumbing your nose at the Constitution. It's something that everybody who holds the Constitution as inspired ought to be very, very incensed about. But it's plain that this guy is surrounding himself with neocons, and it's not. I've repeated in my World Affairs briefs, it's not because he is an insider. Nobody is allowed in the inside, that is the corrupt dark side of government, the secret combination that controls this government, unless they've been grossly immoral and preferably homosexual type of moral. They'll take heterosexual immorality, but you've got to corrupt your morals to prove to them that you're worthy of knowing about the deep, dark secrets that they hold. And Romney's never going to enter that club, but that does us little good if he's bending over backwards so hard to please them. I mean, his top advisor chief is Michael Chertoff. He's the Darth Vader of Homeland Security. There's not a more evil person on the face of the earth than Michael Chertoff, corrupt as can be. I could give a list of others that are similar. But he let Chertoff and Associates pick all of the advisors for the foreign policy, and they're just surrounded with neocons, people who believe in going to war for globalist purposes.
It's very interesting to me that you would say that. I don't read Romney that way at all, and I'm not going to argue, of course, about some of the people that you're talking about. You've followed them far more closely than I, but Romney does not strike me as the kind of guy that would allow others to make his decisions for him.
Well, no, it's not. You've got to understand how this works, Mills. I mean, Romney is a person who understands, as a top business leader, that you delegate to your experts everything that you decide, and then you make the final decision. But you see, if you only pick the experts that the establishment says, these are the top people in the field, you're going to get neocons and globalists, even though they're Republicans, and that's what he's done. There's not a single individual in his staff, not a single person. They're all on the liberal to neocon side of the Republican, and they all give him the same standard line they've been giving every president since then. And since he chose them, they submitted the names, and then he selected them. He sits there and accepts their opinion, the best of it, but he's not getting the other side. He's not getting the other side. By his own choice.
Who do you see as a front runner for his number two?
Well, they're keeping that pretty close to their chest now. A lot of people say front runner now is Tim Pawlenty, former governor of Minnesota. I think Mitch Daniels is probably a pretty good bet. He could play the Latino card by bringing in Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio has had a dramatic change in the past 3 months, where he's turned from a fairly conservative to a raving neocon, speaking at both Brookings Institution and the Council on Foreign Relations, and giving the most pronounced neocon opinions about furthering war and U.S. greatness through intervening in other countries. And it's very, very sad to see that they've got to somebody. Now, I don't think he's an insider. I think he's a person like Romney who's anxious to please, who wants to get ahead, who feels he's got a mission in life and they suborn them, they compromise them, they bring them in by promising them success, promising them notoriety if they will take these moderate positions. But these moderate positions are actually globalist positions. And I fault them because they're ignorant enough of what this globalist agenda is about. They don't recognize it for what it is when it's presented to them in the guise of Americanism and patriotism and defending American values and the Constitution. It's nothing of the sort.
We're coming up on a commercial break. Let's open the phone lines. Number to call, 254-5855. Your opportunity to ask questions of Joel Skousen. And if you are not familiar with World Affairs Brief, it is well worth the time and trouble to look it up. We'll be right back. Is a classic. You can find him at joelskousen.com. Telephone number 254-5855. Let's go to the phones. Israel, welcome. You're on with Joel Skousen.
Hey, Joel, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot for your brief. I'm one of your subscribers, and it's amazing. And, I mean, just consistency. That's what it's all about. That's what the Constitution's about. Consistency, and that's the difference between Ron Paul and Romney. What do you think about Hatch? I mean, obviously he's a globalist, I mean, in the way that maybe Romney is. Or is he straight up a globalist? You know what I mean? Is he indirectly a globalist, or just has the ambition and hires the people and they trick him?
Well, I don't think he's a globalist. In other words, if I sat down with Orrin, and I know him personally, and explained what globalism is, he'd say, no, I don't agree with that. But
right.
You see, like Romney, he's typical of the Mormon politicians who feel like by compromising as much as they can and accommodating the world, they do a great favor to boost their state, to boost their church, to bring it out of obscurity. And they even talk themselves into the fact that maybe we're fulfilling the prophecy of saving the Constitution as it hangs by a thread. But in fact, as they compromise, as Hatch has bellied up to the bar and worked his magic with Ted Kennedy, who's probably what we would call a modern-day Gaddy Anton. These people are going to be embarrassed when they get on the other side someday, and they'll realize how their compromises were, in fact, damaging, how they, in fact, convinced many conservatives to go along with things that they shouldn't have because they trusted them.
Yeah, like 90% of this entire state. Now, I'm not from Utah, but I am LDS, so I understand the secret combinations are highly. They run America. They run America, and it's just scary, but it's also very, very fun and exciting. Fun in like a scary way, I guess, to see all the young people, obviously not in Utah, but outside of Utah, supporting liberty. Reading Rothbard, reading Mises. I mean, of course, Romney has no clue who these people are.
Yeah, it's true. But you see, one of the reasons why, and Romney's a smart guy, and you wonder, why is it that he hasn't picked up this other side of the political spectrum?
Right.
It's because he wants to please the world.
Yeah.
And when you want to please the world, you get a sense for what is going to turn them off and what's going to get you blackballed. And that's why you won't touch anything that smacks of conspiracy. You won't touch anything. And you can't understand what's going on unless you do talk about conspiratorial issues, because conspiracy is where fiduciary officials who have fiduciary responsibilities to law collude with others, which is illegal to collude.
Right.
To undermine liberty, undermine law, and to do corrupt things, and to try to change law without going through the proper process. And it's all over the place.
I have one more question. A person like me, very involved in Austrian economics, and look at conspiracy facts, right? And who do I plan on voting for either Chuck Baldwin or not voting at all, or maybe voting for Obama so people can wake up even further.
That's insane! Forgive me, but you're out of your ever-loving mind.
So I'm out of my mind when I read all these people have predicted the economy collapsing, and then you're following a neocon fascist guy like Romney. I mean,
he is not. Out of your mind. Romney is not a neocon. Do you even know? Wait a minute. Excuse me, 1 second. Do you even know what the phrase neocon means?
There's many different definitions, for sure.
What does the phrase itself? Language has meaning.
Okay.
What does neocon actually mean?
To me, a neocon would be a new description of a conservative. So they reinvent what conservative means. Well, it means taking away civil liberties. Because, for security, and of course the same thing.
No, that's not what it means.
But that's what they do. I don't care about what people say. I look at what the neocons do. Right?
No, wrong. But that's okay.
So they do.
That's okay.
You say it's constitutional?
You have every right to your beliefs. You have every right to your opinion.
I understand. Okay, so Joel, what should I do? I understand I'm insane if I vote for Obama. I'm probably voting for Chuck Baldwin. What would you do? Who are you going to vote for? That's my question.
Well, I will never vote for the lesser of two evils. I won't vote for someone like Obama. I couldn't ever do that under any good principles, even though I think the movement's better off if someone's going to give us globalism. it better be a Democrat because it helps build the movement. If Romney
Right.
does this globalism, you see, it convinces a lot of conservatives and it does much more damage, but it still doesn't justify voting for Obama. I can't do that in principle. I can't
Right.
vote for Romney in principle because I know, even though he is ignorant of where he's taking the country, he will follow those advisors, neocons, who, by the way, the proper definition of neocons, these are liberals who became conservatives over foreign policy, specifically an aggressive foreign policy of American intervention in the world to right the world for democracy. But the caller is correct in the sense that their true intentions never were for democracy. Neocons are all, and I'm talking about the theorists, I'm talking about Gene Kirkpatrick, Bill Kristol, Fred Barnes, these people who are the drivers, the intellectual force in neoconservatism are liberals in social policy and in socialism and government things, but conservative only in the sense that they're prosecuting an aggressive American interventionist foreign policy, supposedly for democracy, but it is for globalism, and they are certifiably globalist. They're members of the CFR.
CFR. I mean, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Joel. Keep fighting and keep the world affairs brief going. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thanks for your call. 254-5855. The technical definition of neocon, quite literally, is new conservative. That's what neo means, new. And if there are individuals who are liberals who are hiding behind a conservative label, it is not appropriate because they are not conservatives at all, not even close. Susie, welcome. You're on K-Talk.
Oh, thank you. I just love Joe Skousen. Thank you for being on.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You know about that S-2205 Second Amendment Sovereignty Act that Hillary Clinton's going to the UN about to take her gun rights away?
Yes.
You think she'll ever get away with this? Everything else is happening.
Not in one fell swoop. There's no way that the Senate would be able to ratify that, and it won't be able to, take away gun rights without ratification by the Senate. They'll try to do it, by stealth, but the gun rights lobby is very, very powerful. Until the Supreme Court gets another liberal justice on it and overturns the current ruling, which states that it's an individual right, they're not going to be able to take those rights away unless war comes, and they'll justify anything.
Okay.
And I think we're at least 10 years away from a major war. So.
You mean World War III?
Yes.
Okay. And I was going to ask one more thing. I'll get off. Karl Rove, his father, and Karl Rove's background. I heard that his father was a Nazi. Karl Rove's father was something in Germany. I don't know. Do you know much about his background, his father's background? I don't.
I know a lot about Karl Rove.
Okay.
I don't know much about his father's background.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Susie, thank you. Appreciate your call. There was a gathering this weekend in Park City, a retreat of top-level Republicans, and a dark horse candidate for the vice presidency, and no pun intended on this, Condoleezza Rice actually stole the show. The people who were there said that her speech was bright, sophisticated, articulate, and that she got a standing ovation. What are the chances that Condoleezza Rice would be seriously considered, in your opinion?
Well, I think it is serious in the sense that she is a woman, and and Romney doesn't do well with the women vote, at least the ones that they poll. He is down about 10 to 14 points on the women's votes versus Obama, which I can't understand personally. That's what the pollsters say, and that certainly would help to reverse that. But that said, you've got to remember that Condoleezza Rice is a real dyed-in-the-wool neocon. In fact, she has been, has had a tremendous amount of corruption in her life when she was at Stanford University relative to the Chinese and doing a lot of skullduggery in helping Chinese get American technology over here. She's a very dangerous person.
That's interesting. Telephone number 254-5855. Lamont, welcome. You're on K-Talk.
Hello. Hey, I got two heavy-duty questions for you, okay? And these are real heavy-duty ones. Okay, what do you think is going to happen with this Fast and Furious?
I don't think anything at all is going to come of this. I think that Holder's going to get off scot-free, that it's no one is going to be prosecuted, no one's going to prison over this other than the one person who resigned and actually got shuffled off to another high-paying job in government. But
do you think
this is a major cover-up? And let me explain why Fast and Furious is so dangerous and why it was so bad that they have to cover it up. Its primary purpose was to funnel thousands of guns to the alternative cartel, the twin brothers, so to speak, of the CIA drug-running cartel that deals directly with Mexico and with Panama and with Thailand and other things. But they've got a direct relationship with the Sinaloa cartel, and that's where all those weapons went. Number two purpose of Fast and Furious was to blame it all on the gun shows so that they could corrupt, our Second Amendment and so-called close the loophole. And both of those failed because of Fast and Furious being uncovered. But that's because those purposes are so nefarious. That's why they have to cover up and make
sure.
Well,
that's interesting.
Never sees the light of day.
I think I've got the right person. I'm going to ask you a real heavy-duty question, okay? And you have a lot of knowledge behind you, and with what's happening and everything. So here goes. Do you think the Supreme Court could be bought?
I think the Supreme Court already is controlled.
No, I mean bought.
You mean with money?
Yeah.
No, I think they have more powerful ways of controlling them. Even the conservatives on the Supreme Court, they have controlled hooks on them. Thomas, for example, they've got a file on him that would make your hair stand up. It was Anita Hill and many other women that he was immoral with, and so they can control him when they need to. Now they don't; they let him vote conservative most of the time. But when it came to trying Obama on his citizenship problem, not a single one of the conservative justices, even two of them who claimed that they would take the case, would do so. They are controlled.
Why?
They only do that when they need to, because they don't want to make it appear as if, all three governments are suborned and controlled.
You're the only person I know of that would even have attempted to even answer that question. Anyway, I really appreciate you being on there with Mills.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job.
Appreciate the call, Lamont. 254-5855. And you can reach us from anywhere in the valley on that same number, 801-254-5855. Joel, who's really behind this then? If they have files on the Supreme Court, if they control the various members of government in both parties, who is they?
Well, that's the biggest secret in America, and they intend to keep it that way because, there's a promise of immunity that drives this whole system, Mills. In other words, that's why they need people who are corrupt, because they have files on people, and while they like to deal with people in terms of the benefits of providing them wealth and major heads of court, that's why when these people leave government in disgrace, they all of a sudden shift over to a private corporation at six-figure salary, and you figure, hey, this guy's never been an insurance executive, and he suddenly got hired by Aetna Insurance. How does that work? And it's because these corporations have secret ties with the dark side of government. And how those things are established and over how much time, it's been known for years. For example, the Coca-Cola Corporation runs a lot of CIA agents throughout the world under the cover of executives for Coca-Cola, as well as, most of our State Department people end up being CIA. My mother in her second marriage ended up being married to one of those. I was shocked to find out that her diplomat husband was a CIA agent and liberal instead of conservative like he claimed. But we know that some of them, for example, Henry Kissinger is one of those. He's one of those who was second level, probably maybe first level now. Nelson Rockefeller was one of them. David Rockefeller is presently one of those major controllers. The Rothschilds have had their fingers in this for many, many years. And there are many high people in the British government as well as the American societies, wealthy people, a lot of bankers, of course the Federal Reserve and the 5 major banks that own the Federal Reserve. That's why we always get somebody from either J.P. Morgan Chase or from Goldman Sachs who becomes Treasury Secretary. And these people are controlling who gets into office. And it doesn't help that someone like Romney says, I think Ben Bernanke's doing a good job. You know, it doesn't help.
Wait a minute. I heard him personally say he wants to get rid of Bernanke. He doesn't want him in that position. I heard it.
Yeah, and he also said he thought he was doing a good job. So Romney changes positions depending on who he's talking to. But even if he did, that's the point, Mills. I can guarantee you that they would never ratify in the Senate anyone for Fed chairman unless he was a major member of the big banking community, of the too big to fail banks. He's got to be one of those head people because they have a tightly controlled monetary system that is completely illegal. It's completely out of the control of Congress, and they're going to maintain that. Even if you audit it, they're never going to tell the truth.
We'll be back with Joel Skousen in just a moment. When we come back, we'll take Tony's question. You're listening to Drive Time Live, the Mills Crenshaw Show on K-Talk.
AM 630 K-Talk. Grab your phone and make the call. Drive Time Live with Mills Crenshaw.
4:43 in the Mountain West. Let's go right back to the phones. Tony, you're on with Joel Skousen.
Hey, I would open with the comment that Al Capone made about honest politicians. He said an honest politician is one when he's bought, he stays bought.
Yeah, very true.
And Joel had mentioned that he thought most of the justices had some kind of a handle where they could be given a certain direction and they wouldn't stray from it on certain things at certain times. Would you care to comment, Joel, on long-serving senators and House members that they might be under the same condition sometimes?
Well, I would have to make that on an individual case by case. Just because they've been in for a long time doesn't necessarily mean they're controlled. But the chances are much higher if they have had a long incumbency. For example, Orrin Hatch, even though I don't believe he is a co-conspirator in any way whatsoever, he's one of those who believes in gaining the acceptance of the world, that helps his state, that helps his church, and so he bends over backwards. And so it's the result is the same. I think in this conspiracy, almost 60, maybe 70% of the people who are directly involved in the control system do so because they think it's benevolent. They've been told, they willingly look the other way. They don't want to see any illegal acts. They're told not to ask any questions, and so it's very, very easy when they say don't go there, they don't go there. And so if you want to stay naive, like Orrin Hatch has wanted to, you can do so. But he's done a lot of damage because of the compromises that he made in the name of going along with other people. Now, I don't think they've got a lot of dirt on Orrin Hatch. I know they have some relative to the BCCI scandal. He had a partner in Houston, which took a loan from BCCI, and he went to bat and defended that against the charges that it was a CIA-controlled bank, and I think that was because he did have some corruption relative to one of his partners in Houston.
Well, he went to bat for Didi Corderdini quite heavily, too, I think, in that same Olympic mix-up. So, okay, hey, I appreciate the job you're doing. I subscribe to your newsletter, and I find it refreshing and recommend it. You ought to tout it a little bit on his show here so others might have the opportunity to subscribe.
Good point. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Let's do that right now, Joel. Tell people about World Affairs Brief and how they can join.
Well, the World Affairs Brief is my weekly news analysis service. It comes by email to your email box when you subscribe. There is a modest subscription fee of $48 a year to help support all of the work I do to research for this newsletter every week. But people, before they can subscribe, should get a free sample issue, and they can do that by emailing me at editor@worldaffairsbrief.com. That's editor@worldaffairsbrief.com, and I'll be happy to send you the latest issue.
Excellent. editor at worldaffairsbrief.com. You talked about not voting for the lesser of two evils, and I certainly would concur with that feeling. However, let me ask you this. Do you think that Ronald Reagan was under the control of these one-worlders?
They worked throughout his administration to control him. I was the chairman of the Conservative National Committee in Washington, D.C. during the Reagan administration, and I have firsthand knowledge of the kind of control that they exercised on Reagan. It first started right after he won the nomination and for president, and the three heads of the major networks asked to meet him in a room right after his speech, and they said, look, Mr. Reagan, we can look with favor on your candidacy or disfavor and either kill you in the media or make you look okay. And he says, we would look with favor if you would take George H.W. Bush as your vice president and allow him to control your transition team. That was the deal. He accepted it because it was put in those ways. You know, we would look with favor. It wasn't, you got to do this or else. You know, they're very slick about this. And but he rebelled and bucked against a lot of the things that were pushed upon him by his advisors, and that's when they threw an assassination attempt at him, and that brought him right into line. After that, he and Nancy turned to astrology and some other things for assurances that they weren't going to die, that the powerful forces that really put the fear of God into them wouldn't kill them. And he was not the same president thereafter.
Do you think we would have been better off if his opponent had won, or having Reagan was beneficial to the country?
Well, Reagan, by and large, was fairly neutral. There's very little that he gave us, very little that actually improved liberty. In fact, we got the highest tax increase in history when he doubled the Social Security tax, and we got the first amnesty for illegal aliens, and we know where that has led. But actually, we didn't get Star Wars. The fall of the Soviet Union, which the press has attributed to Reagan, was not, in fact, anything to do with Reagan. It was a carefully crafted deception. The communists just went underground. They gave Reagan the credit because they wanted conservatives to jump on this bandwagon in believing that the Soviet Union really had collapsed, that communism was dead, and it was a falsehood. So there's very little that Reagan did that actually improved our situation.
Caller, your first name, please. Hello, caller, your first name, please.
Tom.
Tom, you're on K-Talk.
Yes, Joel, as long as we're talking about presidents, there's a lot of people that think Kennedy was deity. Would you expound on the virtues of Kennedy?
Well, Kennedy had one thing going for them. Now, he was a puppet at the beginning, like almost every other president from Eisenhower on. Had their handlers that controlled them. He was surrounded by a great many of globalists in those days. They hadn't invented neocon yet, but they were outright globalists. But he did rebel toward the end there. He was going to shut down a great deal of the military-industrial complex. He was going to shut down some of the CIA black operations that he found out about, and that's part of the reason that he killed him. He still was immoral, but I have to give Kennedy credit for the fact that when he started to see, as you do in the White House, and that's why I don't think they really want Romney in there, what if he sees too much illegal activities and starts to fight against it, they'll have to control him like they did Reagan, or kill him like they did Kennedy.
Thank you, Joe.
Kennedy was an immoral and flawed person, but to his credit, when he started to see some very, very bad things, he started to fight against it.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. Joel, we have a choice coming up. And for all of the wishful thinking about those people who think that, geez, somehow magically Ron Paul can overturn the Republican convention and he can come out as the candidate for the Republican Party, that is not only a pipe dream, it's borderline insanity. It's pure make-believe. So we're faced with a real choice, it seems to me. For any weaknesses he may have, for any faults he certainly will have, we have, at least in Mitt Romney, a man who happens to reason. He is not, to the best of my knowledge, controlled by any group. He has enough wealth in his own right that he can't be bought. He has enough moral character that certainly I'm sure he could be deceived, but he is not going to deliberately try and destroy our country. Why would reasonable, rational beings vote for what I personally believe is an evil man who is deliberately trying to destroy the sovereignty of the United States and believes in a one-world socialist government? Why would people do something that will assure his reelection rather than supporting perhaps an imperfect man, but at least a man who potentially could put us back on the right path?
Well, in the first place, I don't think there's but a handful of Ron Paul people who would vote for Obama. That's against their principles to do that. I think people threaten to do that occasionally, but they haven't thought it out very well, as you say. Most of the people are going to vote third party rather than, I would say, almost half of Ron Paul supporters will vote for Romney. About half will vote for a third party. And you say that's the same thing as voting for Obama, but it is not.
It is. I'm sorry. I don't buy the argument, because if by that action they deprive the voting public of a man who at least has some integrity, then they will ensure the election of Obama, and that spells disaster. It seems to me that smacks of the kind of sophistry that Lucifer himself is responsible for.
Well, it's not sophistry at all. You're talking to a person who does not intend to vote for Obama or Romney, and I have very principled reasons, very strong political reasons, and I can tell you exactly what it will do. In the first place, the stronger the third-party movement gets, the greater the message is sent to the establishment that, yes, you may control the political parties, both of them, Republican, Democrat. We don't get a dime's worth of difference when they're in there. But the only way that people will get a confidence that we can have a new order of liberty is to start to build and to, first of all, deny a compromising Republican, which Romney is. He's a compromising Republican. Deny him the office.
And give it to the devil himself, for hell's sake. I'm sorry, Joel. I have all the respect in the world for you. You are a brilliant man. Your research is second to none. But in this particular case, the polls already demonstrate the strength of that third-party movement. They will get between 5 and 8% of the total vote, which will ensure the re-election of a man that I consider to be the epitome of evil. And as a result of that, we're going to lose our freedom. We're going to lose the Constitution. We may even lose our country to the one-worlders as a result of this so-called principled stand, and I think it's madness. Well,
let me tell you something, Mills. Let me finish. Let me tell you, we will lose our freedom maybe 2 years later with Romney as president as Obama, because he will do the same globalist thing that Obama would do.
I would gladly see my grandchildren have 2 more years of freedom, wouldn't you?
No, because you see, when a Republican does it, it corrupts the conservatives and talks them into going along with globalism much easier than what Obama would do. So
there won't be, Joel,
the principled way is not to vote for either of them.
If I see this man correctly, and I could be dead wrong, if I see him correctly, there won't be another election. We're going to see another the rise of the American equivalent of the Chancellor of Germany.
No, you will see that they will always get people to vote. They just control it more and more. I mean, they never take away the obvious trappings of democracy. It's just that it doesn't exist in practice. But they'll always let people vote. Even in the Soviet Union, they vote. Even in Russia, they vote.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so corrupt.
they have 80 to 90% turnout. Whoopee.
So they're not going to take away the vote. But you see, we've already lost our freedom. People just haven't woke up to the fact that this secret combination already controls the government. That's my message. It's already there. And it's time to stop thinking that you're going to turn things around by voting in a compromising Republican who isn't going to do but maybe 5% difference in nothing of the key things. He won't stop the Fed. He won't stop the international wars against them. Will bring on World War III. He won't do any of that. And unless you do those crucial core things, you will never return to liberty. Romney will not do it for us. So it's meaningless whether Romney or Obama gets in there. And stop thinking about Obama being the icon of all evil, though he is an evil man. The point is, it's the evil system behind both political parties that guarantees that we will not have effective change.
Fascinating as always. I really appreciate your being on with us today. We'll invite you back again very quickly.
Thank you, Nils.
I thank you for being there, Joel.
All right, bye now.
Bye-bye. Well, I promise you, we're going to give you all sides of the issue, and I think you just heard it very articulately from Joel Skousen.